Hi, my name's David Stevens. I'm going to be your teacher tonight for this mini workshop on creating a spiritual practice. A little bit about myself. Been an active Wiccan priest for about 30 years. I'm a third degree initiated witch. I'm an adept in the Golden Dawn. I've studied shamanism since youth. I'm actually First Nations. It's kind of in the blood. I've studied Ruhaniya, which is one of the Arabic magical traditions. And I'm an active Taoist priest. So I'm a man of many parts, as they say. But what is a spiritual practice? A spiritual practice is something that we do each and every day. It's something that you do with complete commitment, that it's kind of a non-negotiable thing. You're always going to be doing it in one form or the other. So why would we commit to something like this? Something that, because it has a lot of value. Basically, what this practice does is it helps you to build a deeper connection to the divine within and the divine without. And along the way, we pick up a lot of benefits doing these practices. For instance, doing the practices can build a level of clarity or focus when we're doing work at the office or something like that. When we have all these distractions in this chaotic world that we live in, we can learn to focus on what's in front of us. It cultivates presence, and we learn to kind of stand tall and build ourselves up through these practices. We can build a level of clarity of what's actually really going on behind the scenes with people and things that are going around us that before kind of like we just didn't realize what was really happening. It helps to uplift our mood when we're down. I can sit in meditation, being grumpy and annoyed, and in a few minutes of practice, I find peace and centeredness and enjoy the rest of the day. It creates a sense of groundedness. We live in right now a very chaotic time. We don't know if we're coming or going. COVID seems to be good one day, and the next we have big outbreaks, and we just kind of don't know what's going on. And doing these spiritual practices can really ground ourselves. We can really just say, okay, one step at a time, we'll take it as it comes. It helps us to bring, just kind of see life on kind of like the bigger picture in life. Like, not just like the little stuff, but the whole picture. And at the same time, it helps us to see the microcosm, the minutia of that big picture. We can see the forest for the trees or the trees for the forest, and back and forth. I can go down and walk in the forest and appreciate the beauty of creation as a scene. Or I can take that individual tree and explore it for what it is. Now, with spiritual practices, how they work is basically they kind of feed our souls. It's kind of like, it really is food for the soul. And in a very real way, the more we practice, the closer we come to the divine. Each time we recite a mantra or we sit in meditation, we kind of strip away a level of resistance or barrier to that divine being without, and certainly the divine being that's within us. Now, there are many kinds of practices that we could do for our spiritual practice, and in reality, there are hundreds, and it can be kind of overwhelming. What sounds really cool? Do I want to practice gratitude in the day? Do I want to say, I appreciate what I'm getting out of life? Or do I want to practice meditation where I calm the chattering monkey that's in my brain constantly talking, shutting up the ego mind, shutting up the shadow, that constant noise. And with meditation, there are many kinds. What type of meditation? Do I want to practice transcendental? Do I want to practice mindfulness? Do I want to practice guided meditation? There's just so much. What I've done is I've kind of broken it down into categories that we can get a better idea of what we would like to look at, to work on, and we'll just start. So the first three categories, there are four. The first three are what I call preparatory categories. And the first three are physical, emotional, and mental practices. Physical practices might be something like yoga, a stretching practice, qigong, or an internal martial art like taiji or bagua or xingyi or something like that, or perhaps breath work, things that affect the body, that bring clarity, that bring strength, that bring poise. Then we move on to emotional practices like gratitude, being thankful for what we have, and doing it almost in a ritualistic kind of sense, of listening to things that we're grateful for, and saying, yes, I thank the divine that I have these, or I thank the inner guru in me for having these. And then there's practices like acceptance. It's just, I'm accepting what's coming to me without attachment, without aversion. It is what it is. I will take it as it comes. There are practices for the mental areas, and namely these fall under meditation. For instance, mindfulness meditation has really taken off, where we focus on a single thing. There's other systems. Generally, the big systems come out of either what you might call the Hindu tradition, which is Vedic or Tantric, or there's a few others, but those are the primary. That's for India, and then there's the Taoist and the Buddhist and a few others out of China. Then there's guided meditation. There's a whole lot. Meditation is such a big category, and you'll find that frequently there's a lot of crossover between the different styles of meditation. At the highest levels of, say, like Taoist and Buddhist practice are very similar, even though they have very different goals. Buddhism inherently is about the mind. And Taoism is inherently about the spirit, yet at the higher end, the mind and the spirit merge, so the practices are quite similar. The mind becomes consciousness, as opposed to the ego mind that all of us are so familiar with. And then the final level these are the last practice group are the direct spiritual practices, where there isn't necessarily a preparatory level to it. It's a direct practice, which can often mean direct experience with the divine from it. Some of them are very almost benign. Say, for instance, prayer. Prayer, which is common to nearly every spiritual tradition without there. It is direct reciprocity with the divine. I'm going to have a conversation with the divine in however I see it, and I give of myself so that the divine can give back to me, in the sense that we're going to have a conversation. And at the beginning levels, the conversation is kind of me to the divine. And at the higher levels, it's me talking to the divine and the divine talking back to me. Eventually, we can reach a point where the barriers to our reality move aside, or we're able to pierce them in some kind of way and have a direct experience of the divine. We can have that also during the next possible practice, which is ritual practice. Pagans love rituals, and there's a lot to go into ritual. There can be a mental aspect. There's a physical aspect. There's an emotional aspect. All of the lots of spiritual practices can be molded into a ritual. But at its highest level, ritual is a spiritual practice directly. It just has lots of components. One of the final spiritual practices is mantra. Mantra, which is a personal favorite, so I'm going to yap about it. Mantras are words of power, as opposed to what we so often hear nowadays as affirmations, like, I am powerful, I am happy. You would say that over and over again. Well, that's actually an affirmation. That's not a mantra. A mantra is a word that has either been seen, as in like seen from a seer, from like a holy person has seen this mantra, or the mantra has been extrapolated from other words. In Ruhaniya, there's a technique called the science of the words, where we put specific letters in specific orders to create a mantra. And the spirit of the letters is the one that brings us the power of the mantra. Whereas seen mantras, like those seen from the shamans, the medicine men, sometimes they're given words of power by the spirits, or the rishis and the saints and the sadhus sometimes are given words of power directly from the divine. Perhaps Shiva has given them a mantra to practice with. A mantra like Om Namah Shivaya, which is said to have actually power over the elements. Your salutations to Lord Shiva is said to bring about a deeper connection to the elements, among other possibilities. Many of the Vedic mantras have, or tantric mantras have, effects above and beyond just the ones they talk about. There's a lot of, and that's really, it's a Vedic mantra and tantric mantra are its own beast, as they say. So now that you kind of have an idea of what's kind of out there, we have those 4 categories of mantras, or not mantras, but 4 categories of spiritual practices. The next is, what do we do? How do we go about it? Well, there's really just 5 steps. And the first step is pick your practice. What am I looking to get out of this? Am I, let's just face it, am I an advanced spiritual being? Am I going to get benefit out of doing something that's more preparatory? Or do I want to go towards something like, I have a bunch of practice under my belt, I want to go for something more direct? Or do I want to cover all my bases? Do I want to actually pick up a couple practices? Do I want to do one for physical? My back hurts. Well, maybe I should pick up yoga. But it's practicing yoga with a spiritual bent. It's practicing yoga to open up my back channels, open up my body to a higher spiritual possibility. At the same time, I'm working on my back. Maybe it's breath work. The breath has great spiritual power. In Ruhaniya, there's entire systems of magical study that are nothing but mantra and breath. Perhaps it's emotional. Perhaps we are feeling mentally drained. In this day and age, it's very easy to be emotionally spent. Um, just the various crises that we have day in and day out um, really leave us drained emotionally and mentally, and finding a practice that will allow that to clear things out is always a good thing. Having a meditation practice, for instance, may allow you to clear your mind of what's going on. Having a gratitude practice may allow you to be thankful for what you have. Having an acceptance practice may allow you to be accepting of what's coming your way and the circumstance of where you're at, and being emotionally responsible for what's coming. So find out what you're kind of looking for. Kind of have a checklist of, what am I missing in life? What do I want in life? And then pick my practice. Do a little research. Find a practice that's going to work for that, and start with that. And then create your space. And your space is something that's dedicated to doing it. And that may be just a chair in the corner of your room, or it may be an elaborate altar. You may set up an altar space so that you sit and pray in front of your concept of the divine. If you're Wiccan, it may be the Lord and the Lady. You may be a little bit less, sometimes less is more. Perhaps you simply have a couple candles up there and a bell or something like that, just to start your practice. Ring the bell. Create your space. Make sure it's a space that you're not going to be disturbed. This is your time. It's going to be your time to shut that phone off, turn the internet off, tell your roommates, tell your family, it's time to be quiet. I need a few minutes to myself. Everyone should respect that. And then once you've picked it, once you've set it up, then it's time to commit to it. A commitment to a spiritual practice is probably the most important step. If you do a practice for a few days, your benefits will be minimal, if anything. But if you commit to a practice and do it for at least a 40-day period. 40 days seems to be a very powerful number in the East and the West. 40 days for Noah. 40 days is the sadhana, or it's basically the length of time that any spiritual practice in India is practiced. 40 days or 40 days, a variance of 40 days. And the thing with a spiritual practices is there seems to be some sort of component that when you're practicing something spiritually, there's like a force out there that's trying to prevent you from achieving it. And I think it's kind of like almost a karmic force, because life is really about spiritual growth. And right around day 25, day 30, you will start having obstacles to your spiritual practice. You will have stuff that starts showing up like, oh, I've got a meeting. Oh, I've got this. Oh, the phone is ringing. Oh, somebody's knocking at the door. There will be things that will try and take you away from your allotted time. And I say, unless the house is burning down or something like that, it's your time. Complete your practice. Especially with mantra. With a mantra practice, you have to complete it. Otherwise, it doesn't count. And if you miss one day, it's all for naught. You have to start over at day 1. So once you've committed yourself to that time, this is the time I do it. So I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. I have a busy life, but the only time that I can do it is in the morning. I commit myself to half an hour of spiritual practice a day. Half an hour, wow, that seems like a lot of time. It's not. It's really not. We have spent so much time making life easy that we can find a million ways to waste it away. We can spend hours wasting our time on the internet, social media. At the end of the day, when you're on your deathbed, are you going to lament that you did not spend more time with your social media, or did you spend more time doing your spiritual practices? Am I going to enter the great samadhi with peace in my heart? Am I going to walk into the summer land being greeted by the gods and the goddesses? Or I'm going to be worried if I didn't tweet that day. So commit to your spiritual practice. The next step is to begin. Start in earnest. You deserve this. This is your birthright. Start your practice. And don't let anyone stop you. And then, when you've gone through, say, like 20, 25 days, expand your horizons, expand your vision, and kind of think about, how am I doing with this? How do I feel mentally doing this practice? How am I physically feeling? And how am I doing emotionally? And you'll discover that when you do physical practices, they affect you emotionally. They may, blockages are cleared. Spiritually, it might be easier to connect to the divine. There's everything kind of weaves in and out of each other when it comes to spiritual practices. The other thing is our relationships with people will frequently change. What do I notice about myself? What do I notice about other people? What do I notice about my reactions with them? And now that I've done it, what areas of my life do I need to feel that I need to change? I've spent a half an hour in my practice. Maybe I want to spend more time in my practice. Maybe I want to commit to an hour every day of sitting meditation. I like how this feels, or I don't like how this feels. I don't really feel like I'm getting anything from it. Did I commit to this long enough? Maybe I didn't. Maybe I need to sit for 120 days before I get the benefits. Or maybe I just didn't need this and I need something else. The next question is, what are the parts of it that I enjoy? If this is a hard slog, if this becomes spiritual work and not practice, it's not going to last long. This is your time for you. Sit and enjoy yourself in practice. Let this be the place that you are calm and at peace. And finally, what parts of it do I find difficult? Going back to that work. Because sometimes we think it's work only because we're having a difficult thing. Perhaps it's meditation and my back hurts. I discovered when I first started sitting in meditation for longer than 20 minutes, my back would hurt because I'm sitting straight and my spine is erect and I have a muscle in my lower back that hated it. So I had to go and I'm like, I'm enjoying what I'm doing, but my back hurts. I can't sit for long and I'm kind of losing some of the benefits because my mind keeps jumping back to Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, thinking about my spiritual eye, and then suddenly, a twinge of pain, and now I'm out of concentration, I'm out of opening my chakra, and my back hurts. So I had to go and work out. I had to pick up a weightlifting regimen, resistance training, and I started doing some yoga. All with the idea of it helping me sit longer in meditation. They became part of my spiritual practice. They became the physical parts of my spiritual practice so that I could delve deeper into the spiritual parts of my spiritual practice. And the other thing is, am I keeping my promise to myself? Am I keeping my word to myself that I am here for this? This is my practice. Am I doing what I set out to do? And if I'm not, we either get to realign what we're doing and go, okay, why are we not keeping our practice? Why are we not keeping our promise to ourselves that this is what we're going to do? And adjust it. Maybe you're not at a place quite yet to have a committed practice. Or maybe you are, and there's something that's getting in the way. And usually it's up here. There's some sort of mental block. The shadow self, squeaking in your mind about, you're not good enough to sit, or whatever it is. The shadow self gets in the way frequently. And we're like, okay, maybe we'll need to work on that next. But so as long as we're keeping our word to ourselves of the reasons why we're here and why we're doing it, and and sometimes another thing is we can be doing something for a completely different reason, thinking we're doing it for that came out a little weird, but it's not uncommon that a boyfriend will go to a yoga class going, okay, well, I'll, a spiritual yoga class, and they'll go with the idea that they're going to do it for that. In reality, they're doing it for another reason. Maybe they're just, checking up on their girlfriend or whatnot, or maybe they're out trying to impress people for whatever reason. Make sure you're going for the right reason. Make sure you're going for it for an actual spiritual experience. And in the end, maybe you go for the wrong reasons and the right reasons show up. The universe generally sorts itself out. So, but, with that said, that's kind of the spiritual practice in a nutshell. And I'll kind of give you an idea of what my spiritual practice. I fall into the category of the extreme spiritual practitioner. I practice 3 hours a day, regardless of whatever's coming my way. If, for instance, when I was on a trip to go see the beautiful Rocky Mountains of British Columbia and Alberta, I practiced my practices in the car, either when I was driving, thinking about like the mantras and things like that I can do inside my head, or when I was sitting next to my wife, or when we pulled over, sometimes I would sit and meditate for a few minutes. I might have had to curtail the time that I practiced, but my practices were always done. And sometimes that's something you'll have to do is go, okay, I can't do this, but 99% of the time I am going to commit to my 15 minutes or whatever it is you decide. So when I get up first thing in the morning, it's usually between an hour and an hour and a half of mantra practice. Then it's followed by anywhere from a half an hour to an hour of meditation, usually in the tantric or yogic practices, something like Sushumna breathing, or opening the heart lotus, or one of many practices that I do. Then during the mid part of the day, what I call my second sadhana or spiritual period, I will do prayers, and frequently a ritual of some kind, perhaps an invocation to an angel. That's kind of the time that I get to pick what I want to do. And luckily, I work from home. And I'm able to kind of shift my schedule around. With distraction notwithstanding. So once I do the midday sadhana, I do a nighttime sadhana as well, which is usually more prayer focused. Sometimes there's some magical aspects to it, but it's usually left in a way that I commune with the divine. I do actually meditational techniques where I commune with the divine specifically and other spirits, usually in this case the jinn, or more shamanic spirits. So I do, and then there's, like I said, I do weight training, and I do Qigong and Tai Chi and several other spiritual practices throughout the day that I don't even actually consider part of my practices anymore. They're just part of my life. And at the heart of it, that's what we want our spiritual practices to become. They just become part of our life. It's what we do, and we stop worrying about the time that we spend in them, because they bring us so much benefit. And like I said, I do 3 hours a day on average, which is extreme for most people, but luckily my life allows me to do that. I suspect that if you can commit to 15 minutes a day in one or more spiritual practices, that you will reap many, many benefits. And really, there's very little reason that we can't practice more. We just have to decide what's more valuable to us. Are we going to watch TV? Are we going to do social media? Or are we going to find ways to do our spiritual practice? I mean, one of the best ways, a lot of us commute. You can chant mantras in the car. You can say prayers in the car. You can do many, many things while you're waiting in traffic. We can be creative in how we practice. Sometimes we can't sit in our sacred space. Sometimes we just have to make where we're sitting our space. But with that said, that is your introduction to creating your spiritual practice. Let me know if you have any questions. You can contact me through Vancouver Pagan Pride. I am the ritual coordinator, and I would love to talk to you about building your own spiritual practice. Have a great day and a great Halloween. Good night.